Hey everyone, welcome back to The Explainer. Today, we are completely flipping the script on how you think about wealth, success, and honestly, just everyday survival. We're going to dive into some absolutely fascinating insights from the legendary contrarian investor Howard Marks. And we're going to take his brilliant investing philosophy and apply it directly to the hidden everyday traps of modern life. Listen, if you've ever felt like you're working harder and harder, but somehow not getting any further ahead, you're definitely going to want to pay close attention to this one. Because it turns out, mastering money is actually all about extreme defense. It's not about those flashy, aggressive, swing-for-the-fences moves. Okay, let's dive right into this. To really understand how the greatest investors in the world think, we have to look at this concept called the loser's game. Now, this idea actually comes from a guy named Simon Ramo, and he was writing about the mathematics of tennis. Yeah, tennis. He realized that there are basically two entirely different games happening on the court, and it all depends on your skill level. So I want you to ask yourself right now, are you playing a winner's game or a loser's game? Think about championship tennis for a second. We're talking Nadal or Djokovic playing at just lightning speed. Those pros, they are playing a winner's game. They actually have the skill to hit these incredible, unreturnable winning shots. But amateur tennis, totally different story. That is a loser's game. Amateurs don't win by hitting incredible, flashy shots, right? They win simply by just keeping the ball in play and waiting for their opponent to mess up. And here's the thing. For the vast majority of us, investing in personal finance is absolutely a loser's game. You win strictly by avoiding unforced errors. And our mentor, our sort of sensei for this entire approach today, is the billionaire founder of Oak Tree Capital, Howard Marks. See, amateurs in the market, they love to chase the flashy, quote-unquote, good assets at absolutely any cost. They think, a great company is automatically a great stock to buy. But Marx points out that the true defensive master wins by demanding a strict margin of safety. Like he says, the secret to success isn't just buying good things. It's buying things for less than they're actually worth. If you overpay for a high-quality asset, you are in trouble. But if you pay less than its intrinsic value, well then, you've got the wind at your back. Now, what's really interesting here is how this concept completely challenges our basic logic. Marx draws on Nassim Taleb's ideas about randomness to answer this exact question with a huge, resounding no. In things like the physical sciences, a good process basically guarantees a good result. But in investing, there's massive, inescapable randomness. In the real world, bad decisions get lucky and succeed all the time, and perfectly good, sound decisions get incredibly unlucky and fail. You simply cannot equate a good outcome with mastery because, well, luck is literally always in the room. And because of that randomness, trying to predict the macroeconomy is a massive trap. Marx argues that just because something should happen absolutely does not mean it will happen. Most financial forecasters out there, they basically just extrapolate the recent past straight into the future. And sure, that's usually right, but because everyone already expects it, it makes exactly zero money. Now, radical forecasts, those definitely make money, but almost no one is consistently right about them. So your goal isn't to predict exactly what's going to happen. Actually, scratch that. It's more about building a robust portfolio that can survive a huge, unpredictable range of probabilities. Which brings us to one of Mark's all-time favorite adages, and I gotta say, there's a bit of dark irony to this one. Never forget the 6-foot-tall man who drowned crossing a stream that was 5 feet deep on average. The point here is, you cannot survive on average. Your financial defense has to be built to survive the deepest, darkest, absolute lowest spots of the stream. If you build a strategy that only works on average, I promise you a single really bad day will completely wash you out. So the crucial point we're getting at is that successful investing is really a negative art. Marx actually picked this up from Mike Milken's high-yield bond philosophy way back in the late 1970s. Think about a standard bond for a second. It just promises a fixed return, right? Let's say 5%. Well, if 90 out of 100 bonds pay exactly 5%, it honestly doesn't matter which of the 90 you pick. You don't need to be a genius and find the absolute winners. You just have to aggressively, ruthlessly exclude the 10 that are going to default. This completely rewires how you look at risk. Marx and his team, they made these incredible returns not by buying up the pristine, famous AAA companies in America. I mean, those were priced for absolute perfection, which meant expectations were so high that things could literally only get worse. Instead, they played extreme defense. They went contrarian and bought single B bonds. These were basically the worst companies, with expectations so incredibly low that if the company merely managed to survive, there was a massive upside. It's just the ultimate defensive play. Let's shift gears and see how this builds into our everyday lives. Because look, If Wall Street is a loser's game won by avoiding unforced errors, Main Street is an absolute boss battle. The modern economy we live in is effectively a system mathematically designed to force you into making those exact unforced errors we were just talking about avoiding. And this brilliantly illustrates what's known as the Boots theory of socioeconomic unfairness. It proves the math behind the trap. Imagine a wealthy person who spends $50 up front on a really high-quality pair of boots that last 10 full years. Great. Now, a poor person only has $10 to their name, so they have to buy cheap cardboard boots that leak and just completely fall apart every single year. Over a decade, the poor person spends double the amount, $100, and still ends up with wet feet. Lacking that upfront capital literally forces you to pay double just to survive. And that lack of capital? It triggers this horrible cascading series of financial penalties. Just consider this number for a second: 700%. If you're sitting on a $20 bank balance and a $25 auto subscription happens to hit, you drop $5 into the negative. Boom, the bank hits you with a $35 overdraft fee. You effectively just borrowed $5 for a single day and it costs you $35. That is literally a 700% interest rate loan. It's a massive, crushing penalty exclusively charged to the most vulnerable people in the system. This whole concept is called the poverty premium. It is the literal cost of having zero financial defense. Because everything costs more. Buying single rolls of toilet paper costs 3 times more than grabbing those bulk packs at Costco. Renting? That's basically 100% interest yielding zero equity. Need a car? Those high-mileage clunkers require predatory loans hitting 24% APR. And perhaps most devastatingly of all, a scarcity mindset. Just that constant, exhausting panic of everyday survival. It taxes your cognitive bandwidth so much that it literally drops your functional IQ by 13 points. Being broke isn't a character flaw, guys. It is a relentless mathematical and psychological penalty loop that maxes out your brain and makes unforced errors completely inevitable. So what's the typical modern solution to this? Just hustle harder, right? Send both partners into the workforce. Well, groundbreaking research by Elizabeth Warren exposes another massive systemic trap here. It's the illusion of the dual income advantage, and it explains exactly why earning more today somehow feels like you actually have way less. Let's look at the timeline, because it's pretty wild. Back in 1970, a single-income family could comfortably afford a home, spending only about 25% of their pay on housing. But crucially, they had a built-in emergency backup plan. The stay-at-home parent could always enter the workforce if a disaster hit. Fast forward to 2023, and 2 incomes have basically become the mandatory requirement just to tread water. Housing prices have doubled relative to inflation, those dual incomes are now 100% committed just to baseline expenses, and families have completely burned through their emergency backup plan. That safety net is just gone. But it actually gets worse when you break down the horrifying math of that second paycheck. Let's say a second partner goes to work for a $50,000 salary. First off, it gets heavily taxed at the household's highest marginal bracket. Then subtract the huge cost of childcare, subtract the cost of a second commute, and then subtract what we call exhaustion expenses. You know, ordering takeout constantly because you're both just too incredibly tired to cook. The terrifying reality is that this $50,000 job might only net the household a measly $2,000 a year. That partner is effectively working full-time for about $1 an hour. Think about that. So where did all the rest of the money go? Well, it went straight into the bidding war for normalcy. See, when dual incomes became the standard, families suddenly had twice the purchasing power to compete for housing in decent school districts. So what happened? Housing prices just got bid up to match the new reality. Now you literally need 2 incomes just to afford exactly what 1 income used to buy. It's this massive financial arms race where everyone escalated and nobody actually won. Okay, so how do we escape these traps? We have to go right back to Howard Marks and his contrarian philosophy, winning by not losing. Your action plan requires extreme defense. First, you have to ruthlessly audit your life for those vampire costs. Late fees, overdrafts, those single-item premiums we talked about. Second, you have to artificially restrict your lifestyle right now to build a $1,000 cash buffer. That buffer is the weapon that destroys the poverty premium. And finally, restructure your fixed housing and auto costs so they are based on just 1 income, which restores your ultimate financial backup plan. Now I know, this level of financial defense isn't flashy. It requires real sacrifice while all your peers are aggressively overextending themselves on fancy leases and massive mortgages just to look prosperous. But remember this absolutely brilliant insight from Marx. What the wise man does in the beginning, the fool does in the end. The true winner is the one who quietly builds a buffer, totally avoids the unforced errors, and ultimately just buys their own financial freedom. So, I want to leave you with this final, somewhat provocative thought to challenge your own financial defense. If your primary income disappeared tomorrow, would your expanded fixed costs instantly trigger an unforced error? If the answer to that is yes, then it's time to step out of the loser's game, shore up your defense, and start playing to survive the deepest parts of the stream. Thanks so much for joining me on today's Explainer, and I'll see you all next time.